Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today, we're about to play you a 3-minute clip that I begged and pleaded Dr. Spodak to put in at the
Dr.
beginning.
Spodak, who's that?
Dr. Spodak. And so I'm going to play it right now, and then we're going to go into the thought-provoking conversation and the dialogue that he and I have. And there may be maybe I'll make fun of you today, Craig. Maybe I won't. But
Yeah. Who knows?
It's always fun. It's always fun.
It is. It's fun for me too, Peter.
Yeah,
But I'm excited to share this beautiful experience of Naval Ravikant with our audience. If you haven't heard Peter and I talk about him before, this is a great little 3-minute clip about his greatness.
We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Let's talk about hard work. If getting wealthy is your goal, you are going to have to work as hard as you can. But hard work is absolutely no substitute for who you work with and what you work on. What you work on is probably the most important thing. And you can save yourself a lot of time if you pick the right area to work in. Picking the right people to work with is the next most important piece. And then third comes how hard you work. But they're like 3 legs of a stool. If you shortchange on any one of them, the whole stool is going to fall down. So it's not like you can pick one over the other that easily. First, figure out, what should I be doing? What is something where there is a market that is emerging, there's a product that I can build that I'm excited to work on, and something where I have specific knowledge and I'm really into it. Second, surround yourself with the best people possible. And no matter how high your bar is, raise your bar, because you can never be working with other people who are great enough. If there's someone greater out there to work with, you should go work with them. I advise a lot of people who are looking at which startup to join in Silicon Valley. I say basically pick the one that's going to have the best alumni network for you in the future. Look at the PayPal mafia. They work with a bunch of geniuses, so they all got rich. Try and pick based on the highest intelligence, energy, and integrity people that you can find. And then finally, once you've picked the right thing to work on and the right people to work with, then you work as hard as you can. This is where the mythology gets a little crazy. People will work 80, 120-hour weeks. A lot of that's just status signaling. It's showing off. Nobody really works 80 to 120 hours a week sustained at high output with mental clarity. Your brain breaks down. You just won't have good ideas. Really, the way people tend to work most effectively, especially in knowledge work, is they sprint as hard as they can while they're working on something and they're inspired and they're passionate, and then they rest, they take long breaks. It's more like a lion hunting and much less like a marathon runner running. So you sprint, then you rest, you reassess, and then you try again. And what you end up doing is you end up building a marathon of sprints. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. People talk about impatience. When do you know to be impatient? When do you know to be patient? Impatience with actions and patience with results. Anything you have to do, just get it done. Why wait? You're not getting any younger. Your life is slipping away. You don't want to spend it waiting in line. You don't want to spend it traveling back and forth. You don't want to spend it doing things that you know ultimately aren't part of your mission. And when you do them, you want to do them as quickly as you can while you do them well with your full attention. But then you just have to give up on the results. You have to be patient with the results because you're dealing with complex systems, you're dealing with lots of people. It takes a long time for markets to adopt products. It takes time for people to get comfortable working with each other. It takes time for great products to emerge as you polish away, polish away, polish away. Impatience with actions and patience with the results.
Well, what did you think of that?
I think honestly, Craig, I've heard it a number of times. And this theme keeps coming up in my life so much right now, like the concept of, there's so much, but let me back up and say, I've heard it a number of times in preparation for the podcast and kind of talking you into doing this, which you really didn't want to just have Naval narrating and then us talk about it, right? Because we have our own stuff to stand on. But you and I pull bits and pieces from Naval. So I thought this was a great thing to do as the end of the year is coming to an end. We're coming towards the Thanksgiving. It's been a gut punch year. I just thought it was applicable. And I've listened to this recording a number of times and I've thought to myself, if I was on the receiving end of hearing this message, I think it would fire me the hell up. And so there's a couple of things I want to unpack. But number one, what was your takeaway from this?
I guess in a nutshell,
not to put you on the spot right now.
No, it's fine. It's fine. In a nutshell, we get energized around a concept or idea and we start running And
Mhm.
oftentimes we run into a glass wall and fall down, and we're like chickens with their head cut off. We utilize energy and just run till we're exhausted. And what the beauty about that excerpt, and what I believe Naval's greatest genius, is that he takes things that are
Mhm.
such no brainers. All this is duh. Yeah, all of it's duh. But he has it in such a way that's so eloquent to say, before you start running, before you go on the sprint, pick what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. Just because there's work to be done
Well,
doesn't
no,
mean that,
it's what you should be doing,
right,
who you should be doing it with,
right.
and then three, then working as hard as you can.
Working as hard as you can, but no one does that. They
Well, it's
start
a
out,
beautiful
let's
thing. So
let's
dentistry,
work as hard as we possibly can
Mhm.
with some random person we met at Starbucks, or some like a guy that wants to lease us some space. That's a great idea. And we just put all of our energy and start running down a road, and you get halfway. And then that's where you and I come in, by the way, Pete. Pete and I will get pinged with questions on picking our brain, because people have run halfway down a road already, full speed. And like, well, who are you doing it? Why are you doing it? What? And like, well, what do you
Well,
mean?
let me unpack this a little bit. Here's why this resonated, but I wanted to put it on the podcast because I think it brings in so much of what we talk. We talk about the pillars or all these things. So number one is the first thing. What should I be doing? And this is where you talk about, and you've talked about it in the Bulletproof course. It's about to come out, in the vision creation. What should you be doing? And yes, obviously we're doing dentistry, right? But there's dentistry with a mission. There's dentistry with this vision. There's dentistry with this North Star that you talk about, and Craig, you get. So that, what should I be doing? Isn't, oh, I'm a dentist. It's dentistry with a purpose, right? I have this immaculate vision of what I want my career to look like. And it's going to consist of doing a lot of implants.
Right.
It's a magical team. It's not just, I'm a dentist, therefore let me go to step two. But step two is, who should I be working with? And that's where we talk about the culture, right? Which is such a big portion of your and my practice, is that it's not just who can fill a seat on the bus, it's who can fill a seat on the right time on this bus that's moving at the speed of light or whatever, right? I'm not saying you're not just filling empty seats, is my point. And so culture is something we talk about so much. I actually just got off a coaching call with one of the mastermind clients, was talking about, I'm sorry, a coaching call with talking about culture and how things have kind of been fixed along the way. And here's some things on how to do, and they were getting success with it.
The best part about that person too is that they were early on. We took with the intake forums. That was their chief problem, their major problem. Like,
right?
No one cares. We gotta make people care about this place again.
And it's
now,
hard
what
to
has it been,
fix.
7 months, 8 months, and now their culture is iconic. It's great.
So right. So figuring out who to work with, and then and never, and I love what he said, surround yourself by the best people and never let that bar be stopped. So culture isn't something that you achieve. It's something that you continually work on for your team, because you're going to have inflow of people and outflow, but culture is something that you're continually focused on improving in your environment. In dentistry, I'm talking about. Would you agree? I mean, of course you agree.
Yeah, of course I agree.
100%,
I love
right?
it. I love it.
And then third, and this is the part that resonates with me so much, because, and this is the part that I said, this keeps coming up in my life, right? And keep hearing this, but it's no one's going to work 120 hours a week, and that's just status signaling and all that stuff.
Love that he always talks about virtue signaling and status signaling.
And the reason
it's such a common theme in the US of like, oh, I haven't had a vacation in 6 months. Oh, I haven't had a vacation in 6 years. And the hustle porn that Gary Vee talks about, like,
and that's that's status signaling. It's great that it's finally been identified. Like, you can use that term and be like, no, you didn't. And you can honestly be hard with yourself. Like, I used to think like I was the hardest worker, and I'm working all the time, but like, how much of that was effective? And I think that's what Naval's point was. But here's my biggest takeaway, Craig, from that 3-minute thing was, we are like lions. Okay, we train, we sprint, and we rest, and then we reassess. And so life isn't just the Gary Vee hustle 12 hours a day, right? There's resting and reassessing. So it's a marathon of sprints versus constantly just jogging. And I think that is the beauty of it. And when I finally started unpacking that, Greg, and thinking that, I actually gave myself a lot more grace to say, hey, you may think you're not working hard right now, or you're blowing it sitting on the couch, daydreaming about shit, but you're in that phase of resting, or you're in that phase of reassessing, which is going to make you that much more powerful in the next training. When the next training session starts and you have to sprint, you're going to be that much better. So the marathon of sprints, Greg, is something that is now like a mantra in my brain, maybe to a fault.
Yeah, I see you do that. I see you kind of get, you go in these little especially for Bulletproof stuff, like you'll put heads down for like a half a day and produce like amazing amounts of work. Like I've seen it before, and I could see the emotion that you have going in. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like almost like it's almost like a sense of overwhelming your voice,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll disappear, and then you'll come back up and like this beautiful, this masterpiece. I'm like, what the fuck is going? Like, who was the guy before, and who's this guy after?
Well,
Like,
it's because yeah, you're probably feeling me be frenetic about feeling inspired about something and having like I see the light, I see the tunnel opening right now, and I need to go because I want to go work hard towards that. And then I go off grid, right? You're saying, and so what he's saying is like when you have inspiration for whether that's a project or something in your practice, sometimes that project feels daunting. Craig, there are many times you didn't go over the other half of that where I am grumpy pants and like don't want to do.
Well, that's in the beginning. It's like this whole cycle of like.
Yes.
Feeling like I'm not doing enough. And then
back to the first. Mm-hmm.
And then this negative talk about like, I can't handle it all. Maybe I need to give up some stuff. And then like heads down and then like this creative shit.
But I used to beat myself up for not being able to be inspirational, be creative, be all these be systematic, be all these things. What am I trying to say? Right. And I used to beat myself up like, why can't I do it?
10s across the board.
But now I gotta wait for it. I wait for it to come along in the woods, and I see that gazelle of creativity. I'm like, there it is. I'm going for it. And then I go off grid. And so what he's saying is, when you have the inspiration to do something, do it right then and there. Why wait? Don't waste your life. Impatience with action, and then patience with results.
Say that one more time.
Impatience with actions, meaning be ready to just take action. Be impatient with ready to say go. I'm impatient. I'm ready to go. Wait for that to come along. But then be patient with your results. Yeah. Be patient with waiting for how this translates. Where's the rubber meet the road?
Well, we always overestimate what we can do in a day or a week, and we underestimate greatly what can be done in a year or two. So there's the way the human brain works. You're like, this should be done today. And like, you're really impatient with today and tomorrow. But consistent, repeated effort is amazing over a year, but our brains don't think to a year.
Yeah, and look, as dentists or practice owners, I think those three things, when I first heard them, I was like, yeah, that's so cool for everybody. But then as I really looked at them again, I was like, this is really applicable. And I just think it's, Greg, I think this is going to come by the time this podcast gets produced. We're going to be probably towards the end of the year. We're right now prior to Thanksgiving, but we've got a lot in the bin, and I think it's good. I think these are good things to discuss towards the end of the year when you finally are in. Christmas is kind of the resting phase. Would you agree?
Well, everybody takes pause.
Okay. All right. Let me say the holidays is more of a resting period. Everyone is forced to take pause, but use that rest. And then towards the end, as you start getting towards the new year, people start thinking about goals and, New Year's resolutions, which is really a reassessment of their life. What did I not do? What did I not accomplish last year that I would like to accomplish this year? Would you not agree?
Oh, 100%.
Right.
100%.
And so that's why I think this is going to be very timely, because I think it can motivate you. So over the break or over the holidays, if you start feeling an inspiration to get really, start carving out your goals, start thinking like, hey, this year was I'm going to be reactionary to this year. Where am I going?
Yeah, well, this year was in response to. And then next year could be a blank slate of creativity.
Yes. Instead of being reactionary, which I think a lot of us were like this year, because a lot of stuff came on the horizon that we just couldn't anticipate, right? I'm going to be proactive, and I'm going to take things and I'm going to reassess what happened good, bad, and different in this year. And then I'm going to train for next year. And then I'm going to freaking sprint and fix it. And I'm going to rest, reassess, do it again.
And also, I think this is a good time to introduce the thing that I always talk about, like, just for those of you who don't feel any inspired goal, or who don't have the idea of what they want to create, maybe focus on what you see as fulfilling for yourself. So as you were talking, Peter, I'm thinking about how I went into 2020, and obviously all those plans got decimated after Q1 and coronavirus shut us all down. And then to your point, we all went to reaction, like, how are we going to just survive? It wasn't about thriving, go to the next level. It's like, how do I just regain my footing? Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting there and hearing this and you're like, well, I don't really know the goals I want to create create what will make you fulfilled. What would make you happy? What would you say that if you had happened, what would make you feel good? Because at the end of the day, if you create things that will make you feel good, or even just saying, I want to feel good, and then build that, reverse engineer that. Because I think most of us, especially overachievers, high achievers, say, well, if I just had this, then I'll be happy. Or if I could get to associates, or if I can get to 1 million of whatever, or 600,000 of that.
And sometimes, Craig, feeling good is identifying what's making you feel bad, right? What do you need to cut out of your life?
What do you need to take out of your life? Exactly. Yeah. What do you not want to do anymore? Because I had to have a hard conversation with someone the other day. I was like, and I gave this person a lot of grace, because I'm like, I'm asking this person to do something that they're not good at. And I'm getting really frustrated that they're not doing it. Really frustrated. I'm just like, well, this person's really good at these 5 other things. So it's like, dude, let's do the same thing with ourselves. What are your superpowers? What are you in flow? What activities are you in where you're in flow? And do more of that. And what do you hate doing? Can that be, maybe there's an associate that you can bring in that loves doing that.
Give yourself grace. If you don't force, if there's a daunting project, don't force it, because you're going to generate this hatred towards that project. Wait until you feel inspired or creative or a system genius or whatever, and act on it, right? Do it right then and there. Don't wait. Don't waste your life. I think that's a beautiful thing. I really, as we're kind of talking towards the end of the year, Craig, there's some things I'm excited about. And I think unless you have something else to say on this, I just want to kind of loop into, because you and I talk about things like this in the course that we spent, 3 days filming. And, like everything else, putting out a course is damn hard. But now we're talking about doing a summit, and I really want to focus on some of these things in the summit, because it's been a tough year where everyone's gotten their ass kicked. And I think having a game plan and being not being so reactionary is going to be a beautiful thing coming into 2021.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely a lesson. It's definitely a lesson. I think that you take some of your worst days of 2019 and compare it to some of your worst days of 2020, and you'll realize that the threats that you had are in 2020, for most of us at least, I can't speak to everybody, but were more existential, more global. Like there was nothing you could do April 1st for us as dentists, like that you were utterly powerless. So in 2019, maybe your existential threat was like, you thought this was going to happen or that was going to happen. But one thing we can all look back on is however you were feeling at the darkest moments of the, Q2 and when coronavirus was, the shutdowns were happening, we didn't understand the fatality of the disease and the infection fatality rate. And regardless of how bad things got, it didn't wind up, I think, for most of us being as bad as our worst thoughts were. So look at all the unnecessary suffering that was caused. And maybe use that as a lesson as well, that it's never as good as you think it is. It's never as bad as you think it is. We tend to overreact as human beings.
And if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little stuck, I encourage you to go to download that SWOT thing. It's just a starting point, that bulletproofswot.com. Go to it, and Craig and I have provided a PDF that you can just download and get you started. And it doesn't, in this SWOT analysis can sometimes be, it's obviously designed for the practices that we're talking about this. And we have these conversations with our team and team meetings. So if you're doing a team meeting at the beginning of the year, that's a great thing to kind of start being ice breaking and saying, hey, what are we good at? But also, I have also used that, Craig, recently in a personal dimension, meaning here are my strengths as a human. Here are my weaknesses as a human. Here's my opportunities as a human, and here's where I feel threatened as a human. So the SWOT. So I would encourage everyone to download that. And you can even do it from a personal perspective, and it'll help you start generating your next marathon of sprints if you kind of take the Naval thing and going into this next year. So we're here just to send light and love to everyone, and hope everyone, is, by the time they're receiving this, is in a place that they are happy and they are able to kind of think optimistically about the future. And we are all in this together. I hear that phrase a lot, and I think sometimes it's bullshit, but I think in this industry, I think we are all in it together. I've seen a lot of camaraderie. I've seen a lot of people lifting each other up. I've seen a lot of I've just seen a lot of stuff. And you hear that tagline in like Chase commercials. We're all in this together. Like,
yeah, exactly.
No, you're not. Like, you're not in this with me at all.
Right.
But you're not, it's the truth though, right? Like we're all in this together. I think that's like
we salute our first responders or the essential workers. Like, no, the essential workers are making less than all of us, and we don't give a shit about them because we're putting them, it's like this terrible parody, not even parody, but it's so inauthentic.
Yeah.
But it is true. We are at this point. I mean, that was my hope and my prayer when the coronavirus was raging. I know you saw like my Facebook videos and stuff like that I was doing on my own personal page, but I was like, okay, so here we are, like January, February, super divided as a country, going into an election year, and everybody is feeling victimized, whether it's gender or whatever's going on. I'm like, okay, the coronavirus comes along. It's God's way of saying like, hey, you're human, you're all the same, and this thing can kill you. So I figured humanity would come together. Right. That was my thought. I thought you thought that as well.
I did.
And look at what it did. It just goes to show you that, and again, this is kind of going back to Peter Maluk's podcast, the media, which is such an influential force in our lives. The only job, as he said, is to create advertising dollars.
Getting scarier,
That's
scarier,
it. And
scarier,
fear is the way to do it.
And if you can tune out to that is one declaration that I've made recently, and I will continue in the new year, is that there's a correlation to doom and gloom and the feelings of pessimism and how much news you consume. And
it's highly correlated. Social media and media and depression. Highly
correlated.
Like
you say, that's another thing. You started this podcast with a duh. But like, until you hear it, until you put it in play, until you do your own hypothesis on that, you don't know, because you take someone's, yeah, I hear your advice, but it doesn't translate. Anyway, but I don't want to get off tangent. Let's keep this one short.
Sure.
And
I think it's also just one more thing to remind everybody that Peter and I are learning these lessons over and over and over again. We all know this. We've known this for years. And part of the human journey is that you have to remind yourself we have a reactive, primitive side of our brain that when the shit hits the fan, we're like monkey brain. We're in reaction mode. So give yourself grace, recognizing that if you're going through a struggling time, or this is a moment where you're feeling dark and you're feeling things are collapsing or the walls are coming in on you, recognize that Peter and I have those feelings, and we all have those feelings. So just give yourself a little grace, and tomorrow's a new day. And like Peter says, it's a series of sprints. Maybe you're taking a couple steps back over the last couple months. Doesn't mean it predicates your future. So be hopeful, give yourself some grace, and it's your life. You can kind of design it out however you want it to be.
yeah, I like how you mentioned that. And honestly, Greg, that seems to be a pervasive theme that pops up in reviews that people appreciate, is the fact that like we talk about, our warts and our challenges, and the fact that like, look what I learned. Not that we have it come from a place of figuring it all out, because we sure as shit don't.
No,
and luckily, I get to look on the success of yours and take your clues and use those, and vice versa, as does our mastermind. But I love that, what I see when I read these reviews, and and everybody, thank you for doing those, by the way, because it's literally the only feedback sometimes we get from y'all. So if you're taking 5 minutes out, thank you. But what I see a lot of is the challenges, we freely give out wisdom and are unafraid to get real, was been the most recent one I've read. And that was by Scott, wrote that, Scott Grills. So Scott, if you're listening, thank you for that. And that has always been the thesis of this, wasn't to us to pontificate that we know it all, that we have it figured out. It was our journey. It was our warts. It was our successes. It was how can we help? And that is, you hit it right there. We're unafraid to get real. And sometimes we've probably gotten too real.
They can never be too real.
I don't know. But anyway, let's cut it down. Everybody have a great, blessed rest of the week, wherever you are with this, and we will see you shortly.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everybody.